Hey folks, welcome back to 5 Minutes for Healing. Today we're going to be working on the shame-rage spiral. Now you may recall from our last video, we talked about how shame is a near universal experience for survivors of trauma. Shame is the most difficult feeling state one can experience as well, more than any other emotion. Shame says, I am damaged goods. I don't deserve to be happy. I'm a loser. And because abuse survivors carry so much shame so often, we can call them shame-prone as a characteristic, because this is where they most often go to when they experience distress in this world. So now we've got to fold in the relationship between shame and rage. This concept, by the way, comes from a theorist by the name of Helen Block Lewis and was conceptualized back in the 1950s. And what she postulated was that shame and violence may be the one way to cope with shame that's developed from childhood trauma, issues of neglect, issues of abandonment. So we need to consider now shame combined with elements of mood swings, what we could call emotional dysregulation, and aspects of masculinity or even hypermasculinity. And we can see that as a protective mechanism that allows the man to defend himself against the world. All this combined can develop into a rage response. And again, we as people never want to be swallowed whole with shame, and we will do our utmost to prevent that from happening. Now, knowing that we can't feel shame and rage at the same time, we can see now there's a dance between these two states. Rage can override the shamed state. So we can call rage as a de-shaming experience for the individual. Over time, shame and rage mutually reinforce each other. And together they contribute to a cycle that can repeat indefinitely in the individual's life. Let's work on an example to bring this, make this clear. Okay, let's take your typical couple living together in the morning, your typical conflict over breakfast. Whoever made the coffee, it's too strong or too weak, and there you go. So what we may see develop between the survivor and his partner has little to do with the coffee, but has a lot to do with being shame-prone. So any conflict at all to a shame-prone person will, not surprisingly, induce shame. They will start feeling it, and there will be thoughts like I'm bad, I'm worthless, to go along with those felt states. And all this will bring the person back to their earlier experiences. Not consciously, but it's a repeat of childhood experiences. Overwhelming pain, loss of sense of self, even a fear of being swallowed up by the black hole that we can call shame. So the conflict builds, started over coffee, and it builds and it builds, and the person's shame load increases. Now, at a certain point, the individual, the survivor guy, experiences what we call a psychological projection onto the other. In this regard, it's an unconscious mechanism to dump all the badness that he is experiencing onto the partner he's arguing with. This is not a chosen behavior. We call it projection because it's an unconscious or subconscious experience. It's not rational. And yet, as he projects all the badness now that was his shame now onto the partner, he experiences a sense of relief. We call this a shame-free holiday. And this occurs as the badness is entirely with the partner and not at all with him. And at the moment, he can feel relatively entitled to say or do whatever to correct the partner because the partner is 100% in the wrong and not him. So at that moment, because he is in the clear, he can do whatever's necessary to correct the partner, including rage and other behaviors associated with it. So this period of projection, this shame-free holiday, may only last seconds or minutes. It doesn't last forever. And eventually the projection will dissipate and the fellow re-experiences the shame, but now even more so, because he's just now hurt his partner. He will then frantically try to figure out how to lessen the internal experience of shame and guilt he is now experiencing. He may ask for forgiveness. He may give gifts. He may make promises to go to counseling, to stop drinking, etc., 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 all in an attempt to lessen the shame that he is holding. And this is why we call it a cycle, because it can and often does repeat over and over again. Now, the question, of course, is how do we address the shame-rage spiral? This is a big one because shame is the master emotion. This is not a light undertaking. So we have to work at engaging the shame, lessening the shame, eroding the shame. And by doing so, we'll remove the strength of the spiral. In issues like this, therapy does seem to be the necessary go-to place because of the complexity and the fundamental weight of shame in people's lives. One can't attend the shame rage response in isolation. Thanks for joining us today. Stay tuned to our next video in the series of trauma recovery. Until we meet again, friends.